Well, we certainly appreciate the hospitality of the Beck Center tonight. At one point in the course of yesterday, when we began to hear this forecast, our immediate question was, oh my gosh, I wonder if it's air conditioned. But happily it is. In fact, your appearance here tonight, in the spirit of a 100-year-old house in Lakewood, indicates that you probably don't have air conditioning at home. And that you decided it was an acceptable trade-off to come here as speech to remain cool tonight. So we understand that. But you also may have understood that these are very interesting times, and they're fraught with opportunity and fraught with adversity. And therefore, you're interested in staying informed about some of these complex issues. At any rate, whatever brought you here, I appreciate your attending. We have with us tonight several elected leaders that I certainly would like to acknowledge. Dale Miller, I know, walked in, our county council representative. Dale. David Anderson, Ward 1 Councilman. David. And Mary Louise Madigan, our council president and Ward 4 Councilwoman. And representing Dennis Kucinich, our congressman, is Michael Patterson. Michael, I know you're here. Ryan Nowlin, our at-large appointee, is with us. As is Monique Smith, our at-large councilwoman. Monique. And finally, our judge, Pat Carroll. Pat, I know you walked in. He's in the back of the room. Thanks for being here. I can tell you with absolute certainty that these folks work very hard and take very seriously their responsibilities on behalf of our community. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with them and support them, and I appreciate all that we've been able to do together. Before we begin the substance of my remarks tonight, I would like to affirm how grateful I am to serve as mayor of Lakewood. As you know, I took the shortcut to the job, but the job is a great personal challenge and one that I look forward to engaging with on a daily basis on the critical issues and the opportunities facing our great city, my hometown. It's a very interesting job and a very interesting time. While it is very different from the manufacturing world that I came from, it's pretty clear to me that the principles of leadership are equally applicable to both environments. The challenge of my remarks tonight is to boil down many, many complex issues and substantive subjects into approximately 30 minutes. Now, I know the perfectionists of you just set your watches here, so we'll see how well we do. But I do want to advise you that because of the complexity of some of these issues and the speed we're going to move through them, I'm skipping across the top of them. And in preparation for these remarks, I happened to talk to one of our citizens, Bill Call, and I said, geez, I've got about 2 hours worth of material I got to boil down into about 25, 30 minutes. And his remark was, please do. So in the spirit of moving fast and quickly, I'm going to skip around, but we are going to create an opportunity for questions at the end. So hopefully if there's something that requires more clarity in your mind, and we have the time, we certainly would look forward to exploring them. I have with me my fellow directors who oversee really the hard work and day-to-day business of city government. And I asked them to be here because in my brief 5 months of experience, I'm sure there's questions you might ask me that I can't answer, but I'm sure they will. So we'll work together on that. So let's go ahead and get started. When I showed up in January 2011, I stated that we had four main goals in the year of this appointment. Improve housing quality in virtually all aspects that that means. And I think we understand that's a very challenging subject today. We need to gain financial strength for the purposes of investing in our future. We need to feel safe, and we need to be safe. And we need to improve the service culture of our government because people everywhere expect and have a reason to expect increasing levels of service. So tonight's conversation, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the Census 2010 data. That data is being rolled out on an incremental basis. We'll take a few moments to talk about the financial position of the city. We'll spend some time reviewing some of the housing pressures and initiatives we have. We'll take a look at some of the technological advances we're working towards, some public work strategies that we think will help us, shared services, which is a big conversation throughout the state of Ohio as we speak today, and of course public safety, some of the trends and the strategies we have, economic development, which is critical to how we're going to maintain the ability to afford the services we have, and some of the creative investments we're looking towards, and some of the ways we have to lean out our government to lower its cost, improve its services, and maintain solvency. We'll spend a few moments at the end talking about the future. Lakewood Hospital is a subject on our minds today. State budgets are clearly on my mind, and I want them to be on yours as well, and certainly a quick review of some of the advantages that we have here in Lakewood. So buckle your seatbelt. We're going to go zipping along here. Census. The short form was used this year by virtually everyone. How many in this room might have gotten a survey in the last 2 weeks, which is the long form? I know I did. Did anybody else get the long form? A couple of you. The Census Bureau this year is taking a statistical approach to the long form, which is really the household level data, which frankly is very important to Lakewood. So as a consequence, we're getting the broad brush incremental data coming forward, such as a racial makeup of your community, which you have in front of you. And the answer here, if we could look at 2010, is we're slightly more diverse than we used to be, but it's over a wide spectrum of different racial makeup groups. You can see Pacific Islands showed up statistically, Asians, American Indians, Latinos, African Americans, and, of course, Caucasian or white, 84%. But the 84% Caucasian is a little misleading in the sense that you could be an Eastern European immigrant, still be in that category, but be fundamentally a new member of our society. So we have, as we look forward to 2011 and beyond, an increasingly multicultural community, and that reflects, I think, frankly, a trend across the United States as well. One of the things that's very interesting to us because of the behavioral aspects of citizens is how old they are and what patterns that might expect us to encounter. We actually have a younger city. Our median age is about 35 years old. Median age in the county is about 40 years old. So we're younger than our region, and we're drifting even younger still. About 35% of our population are between 20 and 40. That's these two groups right here. And that's a group that's very vibrant and has very different, perhaps, behavioral expectations than Lakewoodites previous to them. The second largest group is the 40 to 64-year-old group. About 31% of our citizens are in that range. And actually, our senior citizen population, 65 and older, are about 11%. And that's actually significantly less than 15 years ago when it was hovering around 17% of the population. So we're getting younger. And what does that mean to Lakewood and how we behave and what people expect here? Well, it's different. And I think we're challenged to contemplate this data and as it comes out at the household level and look for reasons to make changes and opportunities and expectations of our citizens. One of the things that's a pretty dynamic conversation in the United States is what does a household look like? Here in Lakewood, about 45% are family households. Families defined as basically generally two people, either related by either marriage or by blood. They would therefore either be a parent and children or perhaps a married couple. And that means that roughly 55% are non-family by that criteria. And a closer look at this, and it gives it a little clearer breakout. Husband and wife, no children, 40% of the household combination. Husband and wife with children, about 28%. And frankly, I know on my school board days, it was pretty common expectation back in the 90s even that about 28% of our households had children in the schools. And I think that's holding fairly current. So when we wake up and we think of Lakewood, we certainly expect it and want it to be a very family-friendly place, and we aspire in every way to make it better than it is today in that category. But the fact of the matter is we have a lot of different households living among us. Male only, 4%. Male only with children, 4%. Female only with children, 14%. And you can get the idea. But there's a lot of things to think about with this kind of data. Non-family households. Primarily, we see in Lakewood a lot of single residents in the households. 20% are non-traditional. We have about 34% male living alone, 29% female living alone that are actually less than 65 years old of those two categories. And then we have the greater than 65. We have males and females, and you can see the breakouts there. And what does that mean to expectations and services? And that's different than historical patterns by degree. So we've got things to think about here. So the census data, we could probably spend an hour or two talking about that, and at some point, perhaps in the fall when we have more data, we should. And I think it's a challenge for us to contemplate the ramifications of that kind of data. Let's talk about the financial position of the city. It's an important one. It's a good position today. Has some threats. We'll talk about that in a few moments. But from 2008 to the present, we've right-sized the city government, which means we're spending less than we take in. 179 less people than 2007. 80 of those were full-time. $3.7 million cost reduction. We've improved major costing and forecasting and financial reserve discipline, anticipating future demands that and creating savings for those, and those are being very helpful at this point. And of course, the goal of the financial strength is not for its own sake, although bond ratings are important to us, and bond rating companies and bond buyers love very strong reserves. It does lower our interest rate, which lowers cost to our operations. But more importantly, I see the opportunity to have a chip in the game of economic development where we can create some incentives perhaps, or at least take an ownership in a big idea and make things happen and have greater control over the outcome of things as they come upon us. As it sits right now, in my 5 months here, I've grown to understand that fundamentally we're playing defense. We're responding to marketplace shifts and opportunities and how others might view land or investment in our community. I'd like to think that Lakewood could be in a better position to influence what we really want to have happen. But in order to do that, we've got to be able to influence with financial strength and outcome, and we're not quite there yet. This is a graph that shows you a little bit of the trends going back to 2001. The yellow line is our revenues, and the shaded blue line is our expenses. And you see for a period of years we did spend more than we took in. And our reserve balance, which is the black line, the black graph that you see here, shows our reserve, which is fundamentally our savings account. And bench strength, benchmark would be very well-positioned cities have about maybe 4 months, 3 or 4 months reserves. We're drifting up to about almost 2 months now. It would be desirable for us to have 3 months reserves, and I think we can get there. It won't be quick and it won't be easy, but it's desirable and attainable. And we also see some evidence here when we first began to build the reserve balances in anticipation of retirements and the outflow that would take. And that allows us to have those expenditures take place independently of the operations. We're not funding them from current operations. We're saving in anticipation, and that's a very helpful dimension of our financial strength. So as we look to the closing 2011, we're going to be in good shape in 2011. 2012 and 13, however, are going to be challenging, and we'll talk about that. One of the key elements of cost drivers in a city is headcount, number of people, employees we have. And these are, the green at the bottom are part-time folks. And there you see that we actually have reduced our part-time employment significantly over the period of 10 years. The rest of the categories, uniform officers are in light blue, firefighters are in yellow, other public safety are in the white with the curly cues, public works in the pink, human services in the slashes. To give you an idea, we've been holding those pretty steady. Currently, we have a hiring freeze on in the city in anticipation of what lies ahead, because we know that as a service provider, fundamentally our cost structure is built around people. At the end of a service that we offer to our citizens, or before the end of that service, is a person. Name the service, and fundamentally it's being delivered by a person. So by and large, and so an element of our maintaining fiscal discipline is to control the number of people we have working here. And of course we aspire, as does everyone, to gain more productivity, more out of the folks we have in order to provide increased service levels, and that's a challenge. Healthcare costs. Lakewood spends about $5 million a year in health care. We've been able to hold that line fairly firm. If you look over the last 3 years here, it'll slow drift up. Frankly, we mirror national averages in terms of health care costs. It's a very dramatic impact on our whole country. It's a lively conversation wherever employers and employees are gathered, and that's no different than in City Hall. But you do get some sense of that we've been able to maintain some focus and control and aspire to do that. One of the things you may not know is that Lakewood is fundamentally self-funded for these claims. We do have some overriding insurance at the top end, but we do actually insure ourselves for most of the claims that come out. So we take that risk internally and work hard to manage it. I think we do have significant opportunities to create more wellness focus on the part of our employees, thus lowering those costs. And we look forward to that work in the years ahead. Overtime. Certainly any employer who wakes up in the morning and tries to manage its service level looks at staffing levels and its impact on service. And in fact, if you have more service demands than employees, then you compensate that by paying them or asking them to work more than 40 hours a week. So we keep a close eye on that. We have significant aspects of overtime that we don't control, such as a big storm. We've had several of those in the last several years, and you know what that means to demands to clean up our city, and our folks are more than willing to give us everything they've got to do so, but those are costly to us. And so we watch carefully the overtime issues and how we structure it and how we replace folks and try to anticipate service demands and training requirements. So that's a major element of strategy going forward and focus on the part of the directors and I. One of the hidden and more subtle aspects of cost in a city like ours is equipment maintenance. We have we have about 250 now pieces of mobile equipment. That's an engine and wheels. And keeping an engine and wheels operating well and having it do what it needs to do requires maintenance. And as, of course, things get older, they require more maintenance. We need it to be reliable. So over time, we've had significant reduction in the amount of mobile equipment. That reduces our costs, makes things simpler. And we have some further strategies we're going to employ, such as street departments testing, about to receive their first vehicle, which will have one chassis, a truck, and it'll have 3 potential boxes that can go on the back. Could be a salt spreader used in the winter, could be a vacuum truck used in the spring and the fall to clean out catch basins, or it could be a dump truck used any time of the year, all with one chassis. So our hope is that we can continue to reduce the number of chassis we have out there and the cost that means, and you get more versatility and more year-round use. Obviously, it makes sense that if we buy a car or a truck and use it just 2 or 3 months out of the year, we don't get optimal use out of it. So driving our assets hard and using this technology, I think, is going to be an interesting one. We hope it works, but we have expectations that it will. When we embarked on the automated refuse 3 years ago, it was a little bit of a radical shift for us from our backyard pickup. The city, I thought, did an admirable job of adjusting to it. It did reduce significantly the amount of energy costs it took to run up and down those driveways, maintain those Cushmans. But one of the questions we had was, how will it do in a tough winter? Well, I think we answered that question this past winter. I think we all agree it was a pretty tough winter, and our refuse folks did a great job. And we also grew to understand that, guess what? You don't have to take those big cans out every week. For a lot of us, we could probably put a month or two's worth of stuff in it, based on if you recycle, especially. So one of the things, the breakthroughs, the epiphanies was, whoa, if it's a foot of snow out there, guess what? I'll just leave my can in the backyard for a week or two. And that works well for Lakewood, and there's nothing wrong with that, especially in the wintertime where the stuff won't rot as easily. But the good news is this was a good strategy. We've shaken it down pretty hard. It remains valuable to us, and I think will continue to pay good dividends for us going forward. And I would say recycling is one that we should be very proud of, too. I think we're up to 75-80% participation. I know anecdotally, and that is worth it saves us about $40 of transfer cost a landfill. In fact, we get a little money off the recycling, so we have a net swing of about $70 to the good. It certainly has a very, very dramatic impact on our environment, we know, and I think Lakewood does a fantastic job. We can do better, and we should, but nevertheless, we've gone from as little as 4 years ago from about 45% participation to clearly up to 70 and 80 now. So good news for us and good news for long-term inhabitants of Earth. One of the things that's important that Mayor Fitzgerald understood early and began to build a foundation, and I'm very excited about building on that foundation, is improved use of analytical tools. Now, what these are basically primarily some software we're investing in. It's very dramatic to me, in the sense that it allows us to create very clear focus of trends. Trends are important. When you think about a service we provide to our city, at the end of that service is generally a geographic place, an address, a person who lives someplace. So creating the spatial capacity to understand how services are tied to a physical place in the city gives us enormous interesting insights into trends and patterns. So we're looking forward to doing that. And then once we understand those, the capacity to create more alignment and coordination of our resources. That would lower cost. It would certainly create more effective attention to whatever the issue is, and therefore allow us to move on to the other things. So how do we do that? Well, there's a tool called Geographic Information Systems. We'll talk more about that in other forums, because I think we look forward perhaps in the fall to be able to demonstrate what it can do for us. But it can be combined in ways to to analyze patterns, and allows us to take what are 7 major databases in our city. Police has a database, refuse has a database, fire has a database, housing has a database, finance has a database, and I'm probably missing a couple of them, but there's 7 of them. And the opportunity to consolidate those, even though they are on different platforms, bring them through some Microsoft technology and build them into this tool that will allow us to share insights into all the different service patterns. Very powerful stuff for Lakewood, and we're really looking forward to getting it. It's installed. We have a very skilled operator, Rob Erickson. Actually, I saw Rob in the back here. Rob, summa cum laude graduate at Cleveland State, GIS expert, and we're very fortunate to have his skills with us, and we look forward to using this technology. So we talked about its advantages, and we're listing them there. We also have some other significant upgrades that are on our plate. We are going to make about a $70,000 or $80,000 investment in the police computer-aided dispatch system. It's not been updated for quite some time. The new versions have more of a graphical interface. It would allow us to also have better access to data, maybe better clarity of data, and allow dispatchers and police and dispatchers and fire to more effectively communicate in what are very urgent and very complex conversations. So we have the voice, which is important. We also have the data element, and a police car today, and increasingly a laptop on an emergency medical technician's platform or an ambulance is looking to get this digital connection as they move along too. Things move at lightning pace. There's a robust amount of information that it's exchanged. When a policeman pulls up behind us and looks at our license plate, and they immediately know an enormous amount of information in a very short amount of time, which gives them a great deal of comfort and safety as they approach what are clearly unknown and potentially dangerous situations. Same thing is true of fire as they move into a house, and when was it inspected, what's in the house, what do we know about a commercial establishment, what's there. Firefighters are much more able and readily capable of fighting when they know exactly what's in front of them in a very uncertain environment. Police video cameras. We have a very successful implementation of Madison Park. It's been very helpful there. Good coverage of that park. We're in the process of installing cameras in our downtown marketplace and also Kaufman Park. We're going to be actually placing those purchase orders on Monday, and by the end of June, we expect to have good coverage. Those are force multipliers. We don't stare at them full time, but dispatchers are looking at them. The officer in charge of the police is looking at them. We have multiple chances of seeing something. They are recorded. We can go back and look at events. And we certainly know that Europe has had great success using this technology, and we look forward to expanding it too. Ultimately, we certainly would look forward to all our parks, including Lakewood Park, having that technology. Upgraded radio communications and infrastructure. It's an important element. When we talk about coordination, we talk about coordinating with our fellow safety providers in other cities as well. And we learned certainly in 2001 and certainly learned again in Katrina and some of the massive destructions that have been in other parts of the country, that when you have multiple safety forces involved, if they can't communicate well, it creates certainly in the worst case chaos, but certainly lessens the optimal performance of leveraging the coordination. And we look forward to making significant upgrades there so that Lakewood is well positioned to talk to Cleveland, Rocky River, Westlake, and everybody in between. Makes sense. I think what surprised me was that 10 years of conversation about this. Really, the United States is just now getting serious about it. I think there's some deadlines of 2013, even though we might have realized in 2001 that we had to make some significant changes, but we'll get it done. Let's talk about service culture and objectives. By that, what I mean is speed of response to you, our citizens, leveraging significant information technology at the service level to the desktop level, process improvement work, Kaizen, we'll talk about that in a moment, and certainly training are key elements of speed of response, comfort level and access to information, and quality of service response. So we aspire to having you approach City Hall, no matter where you may enter it, you'll get to the right spot and get there promptly, and that you'll feel good about the experience every step of the way. Accurate, informed information to your questions, no matter what the subject, and just as importantly, self-help to you through our website. We've dramatically upgraded our frequently asked questions. We continue to do so. We've got about almost 250 questions that are commonly asked. So at any hour of the day, you could go there and very likely get a pretty good answer of something you might need. When we talk about strategies, we're really talking about making sure we remind ourselves at every step along the way about who our customer is. And the interesting thing about city government, our customer is also our owner. So we don't have any confusion as to who we're working for and who we're working with and who's expecting it. It's our customer and taxpayer is one and the same. So once we continue to remind ourselves what you expect from us, and in moments of doubt and confusion, we remind ourselves of that question, find out what they want, and let's make sure we deliver it to them. And included in that going forward will be the need, particularly with some of the cost pressures we're experiencing, of organizational design and flexibility. I think I can see a different city government structure that's far more flexible and nimble, applies resources where they're needed today, and then shifts them to a different place tomorrow as they're needed. The traditional structure is driven by silos of departments and work agreements that really don't serve that goal very well. I have every reason to believe that we can be more flexible and nimble. And I will tell you, working with our union leadership are very accepting of this conversation. They understand that it's important to the future of providing services to you, and I have every expectation that we can gain ground here in the months and years ahead. We've identified 33 positions in City Hall that have a direct interface with our citizens on a daily basis. Much of it's by the phone. Some of it's in face-to-face. On June 21st, we'll have the first of many training sessions. But actually, we've never gathered these 33 together before. We're going to put them all together. We're going to talk robustly about their experiences and provide, based on principles of good customer service, do some technology training, share experience, best cases, and also where they can go to get information. And we're looking forward to that conversation. And we'll have many more as well. Lean Lakewood. Those of you in the manufacturing world know that lean is a very popular concept. It's a very challenging one. It's basically designed to address your processes and look for opportunities to streamline them to gain speed, lower cost, and improve effectiveness. The Kaizen word is taken from the Japanese, primarily pioneered by the Toyota manufacturing world, which means many small changes for the better. So it's not a radical view. It's about using critical elements to identify these things. 8 categories of waste. Waste of motion, waste of searching, and I would say in City Hall we do a lot of searching. You know, where is that stuff? Who has it? I know it was here before. We did this study somewhere in the past. Where is it? How can we leverage it? So searching and getting more information to the right folks who need it is a clear opportunity for improvement. Waiting. Waiting is a significant waste. And we wait, you wait, and identifying those areas where we wait, information waits, data waits. Transportation, moving trucks through the city, moving seniors around, are opportunities to improve and understand how we move. Storage. We have a lot of data in City Hall. In fact, I see it keep going up to the attic of City Hall, and I'm just hopeful that in 1958, when they build it, they build enough strength into the girders because there's a ton of paper up there. But the point is, storage of information and retrieval is a critical element. Defects, not doing it right the first time, repairing a meter on a water meter and having it leak, doing something where we have to go back and redo it, all clearly opportunities to improve. How we do our work, which is the processing. And finally, overproduction. Many cases, digging a bigger hole than we need to, or buying 2 meters when we need 1. Those are all elements of overproduction. And while they generally make sense in a more process-driven manufacturing environment, we've challenged ourselves internally to understand that they do affect us as well. Primary tools of this are direct observation of the process, common sense, and leveraging heavily operator experience. And our folks have a lot of great experience, and they're happy to share it and advance the performance. We also are investing in streets. Last year, we did one street, a big one, Warren, 1.1 miles. It was a complex street. This year, we have 13 streets or segments, 5.4 miles. The reality of it is we should be doing, we have 93 miles of streets, so if we were actually going to be doing on a 30-year replacement cycle, we'd be doing much more closer to 10 or 12 miles. So we're under-investing in streets, have been for probably 20 years. So that remains a clear opportunity for improvement for us. Cost sharing, collaboration, big buzzword from Governor Kasich on down through the legislature. Lakewood has a long history of collaborating with our West Shore neighbors, which are Rocky River, Bay, North Olmsted, Fairview, and Westlake. We share SWAT teams. We share Citizens Emergency Response Team Management, narcotics investigation, fire investigation, and refuse transfer with the City of Cleveland. We probably have more opportunities to share with the City of Cleveland. They have the need, and we do too. And we're currently studying probably what is the biggest consolidation opportunity, which is Fire District. Chief Gilman and his staff are part of what was a $100,000 study to consolidate fire districts across the West Shore. There are elements that make sense for Lakewood. There are elements that don't make sense for Lakewood, but we're dedicated to seeing it through, to seeing that we can get something that does make sense for Lakewood. And it'll be a complex, interesting, and probably lengthy process. Let's talk about housing. It's important that we position our houses for their second century and add new designs. Our goal is to do an inspection over all 12,000 of our 1 and 2 families over the next 3 years. We've just invested in a web-based platform. In fact, starting tomorrow, using an intern from the Cleveland Foundation and Lakewood Alive, we're going to be sending an inspector out with an iPad and doing a section of town to test all of the technology, the ability to gather more information and save on the administrative costs and be much more effective at getting more inspection done. I think we'll make this work. It probably won't work as easily as we'd hoped, but we certainly need to do more inspection. We can't afford more inspectors, so we've got to be a little more careful and clever in how we do it. Landlord performance is a big subject for us. I'll talk in a minute our strategies there, and improved effectiveness dealing with foreclosed properties, which is a major challenge for us. We introduced about a month ago our landlord manual, best practices on our website. It's a comprehensive guide. It gives a ton of good information to a landlord. Many of our landlords are wonderful, and some need to improve. And when they don't do their job, frankly, they have a negative impact on a neighborhood in our city. So we're determined to help them understand how they can do better, and then we're also determined to hold them accountable to, in fact, that performance. We've got a landlord session on July 19th. It's blocked there, and we'll be having them through the years. But we do have a good tool available. I'm going to zip through here. I think we're a little long on time here. Proactively address distressed properties. 3 outcomes when we get into a serious distressed property. By the way, there's hundreds, possibly maybe 1,000 of them out there. We either have to find a responsible buyer, especially if it's vacant. It's got to be rehabbed or salvaged by a public or private entity. We have to remove our worst properties through demolition, and all those are options we are exploring. The property here is on the corner of Lakewood Avenue and Hilliard. City bought that property. It's been a source of great anxiety and distress for primarily police and fire, and we're using the land bank funds. It should be torn down by the end of the summer. That's 4 units. They've been breaking our hearts for years, so demolition is something we're going to be seeing at least on 7 properties, perhaps more going forward. We do want to work with homeowners in terms of new homeowners, down payment assistance, low-interest loans. We've had good success of rehabbing some properties. Andrews sold, Wyandotte sold, Dowd over in Birdtown across from Harrison School, new construction in the works, brand new house, probably the first new house in Birdtown in, 50, 60 years. And we've got a residential rehab on Westlake Avenue for sale. So these are basically purchase low, use our housing services to rehab them, and then put them in a market. We have gained money on some of them. We've lost money on some of them. But the real goal is to stabilize the neighborhood, and that we've been very successful at. Human services is our safety net, and we think in a more vulnerable society today. And when we talk about human services today, we're really talking about leveraging all kinds of government entities and our public and private nonprofits in particular. And they're listed here. County government is the primary human services deliverer in our region, and that's true of the state of Ohio. Lakewood has a division of aging, early childhood, and division of youth. They're very important to us, and we are going to be challenged to provide the kind of services we have with resources that are going to be diminished, and that's true across the entire human services platform. But we're determined to leverage this more successfully. Public safety, full range of police services. They're listed here. Not too many communities, particularly suburban communities, have this full range. They're very important to us, but the essence of when we talk about police, it's patrol. And whatever we do in Lakewood and whatever forces we have to maintain the essential effectiveness of patrol. That's a policeman in a car, patrolling our streets, being available to us, responding to issues that you call. The others are equally important. They are how we actually defend ourselves against adverse trends, and we're determined to try and keep them, but it's going to be a challenge. I know this is probably not too clear to you, but it does show three elements of crime: burglary, auto theft, and over here breaking and entering. What these graphs tell us is that our biggest challenge in Lakewood is people want to steal our stuff, and we've got to make it harder for them to steal our stuff. And we've got a lot of cars that are left open, a lot of valuable things left in cars: GPSs, iPads, iPods, cameras, wallets, purses left in unlocked cars. We can't do that. Pass the word. That era is gone. There's lots of folks who have what we want, and we're going to have to sharpen up. But when we talk about what we have to do to defend ourselves, it's primarily property crime. And I would say at the other end of that crime is a criminal who probably is trying to feed a drug habit. So the two elements of what we're dealing with are narcotics use and the need for petty cash to support that habit, and therefore they're coming after our stuff. So we've got to take our game up. When we think about firemen, we often think about putting out a fire, but there's many elements. Firemen are fundamentally our first responders, particularly in terms of natural disasters. We don't have to look too far to Joplin, Missouri, and New Orleans. A lot of communities have been blasted by natural forces, environmental forces, and we've been fortunate. We've been hit pretty hard, but not certainly compared to some. But when we have these experiences, the first folks we look to are firefighters and our police. The disaster command and disaster preparedness lies on the shoulders of our fire leadership. We've got 52,000 people and 17,000 structures to protect. It's a big job. Emergency medical services are the heart and soul of our daily activity, and search and rescue, fire prevention are certainly part of the conversation. So it's much more complex than normally meets the eye. And as basically public safety director, I've certainly got plenty to learn to be in a position to support this kind of work. Economic development is growing the tax base. I'm going to zip through this. It's important, but we need to leverage a lot of different resources to do it. Our commercial occupancy is up slightly. That's good news on both Detroit and Madison. Storefront renovations, Rosie's Wine House is certainly an example today. We've had others. This is an example of an architectural firm on Madison, both before and after, and how it can have a very positive impact. We've had good success attracting actually firms moving to Lakewood, office occupancy. Onyx is a company that moved from Westlake, brought 35 high-tech jobs. They actually bought the office portion of the Bonnie Bell building, so they're investors as well as employers. Paramount is going to be shooting a movie on Arthur Avenue, we think, this July. And the University of Akron, you've read about, is bringing educational capability, all of which stimulates activity in our downtown area. The Bailey building, which is just about full. There's another small company that moved in that does product development. So exciting opportunities there. But development is challenging. This is a good example. Drug Mart, you see it today. That's how, if we were to walk out the door, it's what we'd be looking at. Drug Mart Plaza is about to get a whole new facelift. You see the middle is what they first proposed it to be, and the top is really what it's finally going to look like. So the evolving to where things start to how they end and making sure it fits Lakewood is primarily at the feet of our Architectural Review Board, which is a remarkably dedicated and talented group that drives this kind of result to us. And here's another interesting example, CVS. They're going to tear down the Lutheran Church across from the library. You see at the bottom the original proposal where we started and the final proposal where it ends, which does in fact complement and reposition a valuable piece of land. There are other conversations similar to this going on. The Detroit Theater, we know, is actively in pursuit by McDonald's Corporation. Next Wednesday at the library at 7 p.m., we're going to be talking just about that kind of project in particular and all the iterations. So if that's of interest to you, we'll look forward to seeing you there. Partnerships are important to us. We've listed there. There's nothing we can do in city government that we can't do better by leveraging those folks who are trying to do similar things or allied with us. And so conversations and collaborations is a key part of what I've grown to understand the mayor's job is, making sure our communication is robust and it's very successful. We're getting near the end here. External forces. State of Ohio budget proposes $1.7 million local government fund reduction to the city of Lakewood that will be phased in over the next 2 years. Effective July 2013, on the proposal as it sits today, it may change, is an estate tax reduction has a dramatic effect on us, has a very dramatic effect on the wealthier communities, interestingly enough. $1 million of revenue on average that will diminish. $200,000 of commercial activity tax revenue has a big impact on us, has a bigger impact on our schools. We have an EPA, Environmental Protection Agency Stormwater Control Plan. We've read about the Regional Sewer District and its need to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to reduce stormwater overflow into our streams and primarily in rivers. And we have the same issues. We have about 15 or so overflows each year. We aspire to be a better steward of our clean water, but it's going to require a significant amount of studying and investment. We have 70 meters installed currently in our wastewater system trying to determine when and where that flow occurs and how and what volume so we can figure out what makes sense to solve it. Collective bargaining issues may be on the ballot. Probably has less of an impact on Lakewood. Actually, surprisingly, our agreements are stronger than most, perhaps the state, because most of the thresholds that we see in this agreement are much higher than ours. Actually, we're actually a little we have probably a fair agreement to the citizens of Lakewood than perhaps others. So we look at SB 5, it's probably not a big impact on us, but certainly has a big impact on behavior in the state, and we'll be watching that carefully. Hospital. Well, we certainly read about the dramatic impact of Huron Hospital and its impact. Lakewood Hospital is in a little different position, but has some similarities. And what is primarily the difference is it's owned by the city of Lakewood. Huron Hospital was owned by the Cleveland Clinic Foundation. So the Cleveland Clinic, as owner, could exercise whatever authority it chose to. We have a protection of a lease agreement. We have 15 years left on it. That lease agreement stipulates that certain services need to be provided, and the Cleveland Clinic could not cancel that without our mutual consent. However, that doesn't protect us against what are significant health care delivery issues. The region has 35% excess capacity. There's a major trend towards outpatient care. Health reform initiatives will result in a nationwide reduction of hospital beds. So we've got to work closely with the Cleveland Clinic Foundation. We are doing that. Our trustees are dedicated, vigorous folks. Mary Louise Madigan and I represent the government on that board, and we're determined, as is the Cleveland Clinic Foundation, by the way, to make sure that we have the best outcome for Lakewood. Immediately upon hearing of the Huron news, David Bronson, head of the regional hospital system, called me. He wanted to make sure I heard that news from him, and also to make sure I understood that he does not see Lakewood Hospital in the same position. But it's fair to say the trends apply to all hospitals. So we've got our work ahead of us there. It's a major economic driver for our region, for our city, and certainly a reliable and important part of the quality of life here. Advantage Lakewood, proximity to just about everything. There's an index that has been pioneered now called the Affordability Index. It looks at housing cost and transportation costs. I bet, Ned Hill, you know all about this. We win on both those. Housing costs are remarkably affordable, but also the fact that we have proximity means transportation costs are reasonable. We're not on the fringe. You don't have to drive everywhere to get where you're going. You're in the middle of it, and that makes it much more palatable in a high-energy cost era. Some of the new urbanism trends are favorite to us: a convenient lifestyle, a smaller footprint, and a walkable community. We know about that. So, but most importantly, our energy and our talents, our citizens are clearly our biggest asset. And in an economy of scarcity, we've got to work together in manners we've never done before. But I'm confident that's not only possible, it's highly probable and almost certain here. This community has repeatedly demonstrated its will and capacity to invest in its future. And the next 10 years will be an exciting and interesting one for Lakewood, but we're going to have to make sure we create that.